Hi, I'm Greg Ullin with Reynolds & Reynolds, and this is Connected. I'm really excited about today's conversation. I get to talk with Yuriy Demidko. He's the Chief Information Officer at DP Fox Ventures, which includes Fox Motors. I believe 47 stores. Yuriy can correct me if I'm over or under on that, but I believe 47 stores at this moment. Really excited to talk to Yuriy. He was one of our judges at our Automotive Amplifiers contest at Amplify in Dallas. So Yuriy, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this great conversation. So should be good.
Yeah, for sure. You know, Yuriy, you've been, I swear, all over for the last 6 to 12 months. I see you everywhere, whether you're in person at a conference or on a podcast. I mean, you are out and about. It seems like, sometimes I see everything that you're posting and everywhere you've been. I'm like, man, when does this guy get any work done?
I maybe I just don't work. It's easier that way, or I don't sleep. See, if you stop sleeping, you can literally get this tremendous amount of stuff done. It's a trick for everybody listening. It's just to stop sleeping.
No, you're right. When you can pick up, 56 hours a week, you can get a lot more done.
There you go. That's the trick.
So you're the Chief Information Officer at DP Fox Ventures, and we're going to talk a lot today about automotive. But what does that mean? What's that title mean? I think for a lot of us, we have a job title, right? But there's a lot of ways to define that role in different companies, and Fox Ventures is a big organization with a lot of different tentacles and a lot of different industries. So for you, how would you describe your role?
So it's a great question. So when you speak about chief information officers, I think the one most interesting thing about it is if we look back, let's say 10 years. I don't think there were chief information officers. There were CTOs, chief technical officers, but not chief information officers. And I think that really started to become prevalent, I'd say 5 to 7 years ago. And now many organizations have chief information officers, and the position continues to grow. What's the most interesting thing about the position is the fact that I feel like I have not yet met a chief information officer that was like, hey, I looked for a position and there was a chief information position open and I got the job. That's not usually how it works. It's almost like the CIO position in this current form gets created for the person. So somehow you had a connection to the company, something like that happened, and then you kind of end up in the role. I think the big differentiator, and as you said, every chief information officer, I think, is fundamentally different from, or in some way different from one another. Maybe not
Sure.
fundamentally, but in some way different. I think one of the big things is, unlike a CTO, so CTO is purely technical. It's like, hey, like I've achieved the pinnacle of IT or software engineering, and now I'm a CTO. So me, for example, my background by trade, before I became what I like to call a corporate stooge, I was an engineer. So like that's what I did. I coded. But I think what makes the CIO position, at least in my mind, is having the technical ability to go deep should you need to do that, but at the same time having that business understanding on the other side of it. So you're able to understand the practical applications of what's going on outside of just the technical pieces. If
Sure.
the business introduces, if somebody starts speaking about some kind of business thing, or somebody's talking about strategy, a good CIO can, of course, use technology to see how that strategy can be achieved, but can also strategize from a business standpoint. So that's kind of how I view it. It's like a mix between being highly technical, but also having a very good understanding of strategy and business and practical applications of that technology.
Yeah. Well, it seems like that's a really important bridge, right? Because you have, okay, what do we want to go accomplish? And then we have, how do we go accomplish it? But there's a bridge between like what's actually possible, right? And we got to figure out how we can go do this thing, and then we can have really smart people working on it. But without that bridge, it can be very difficult for, somebody with a vision to then go talk to somebody who has the skills and the ability to develop software to solve a problem. Without that bridge, without somebody there knowing and understanding intimately, what the goal is, and also what's even possible, how we could potentially go solve this problem.
For sure. And it's interesting because, I think part of the puzzle is also understanding the holistic picture that even the stakeholder may not understand. Like if you take the simplest app on earth and somebody says, hey, I want an app to, keep keep track of my tasks, like a to-do app, essentially. All the person will tell you is, just an app that kind of, you put the tasks in there and I keep track of them. Well, after, as a more like kind of well-rounded thinker, like an engineer that's like really good, and I guess more of like CIO type individual, you'll start thinking of like, well, they'll probably want to have different priorities for tasks. Maybe some tasks are more important than other tasks. Like, this is a very simple thing, but being able to think outside of just the constraints of what's being said to you and having like the foresight to see, hey, here is 5 other things that I know will be needed to accomplish this. I think that's what differentiates somebody from just purely technical. Hey, here's what we need. Okay, cool. Write down exactly what they need. You build it and we're done. And being
Right.
like, hey, I understand the business case that's being brought to me, and I can actually take it to the next level and predict a lot of the needs that you may not have thought of right off the bat, which you would ultimately come back to me and say, if I gave you like the most simplest to-do app, you'd come back and say, well, I have priorities on my apps. Are there notifications? Can I get different types of like push notifications? Like all those little
Right.
things.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse as a developer than, when somebody comes to you and says, hey, can you build this for me? And you look at it and you say, yeah, I can build that for you. And you go build it and then you deliver it to them. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, ooh, actually, can you make it do this too? And you look at it and you're like, if you would have just told me that 2 weeks ago, this would have been a lot easier, like a lot easier.
I'm sure in your business, you hear that quite a bit.
Yeah, no, that's a great description of kind of what the CIO role is and the value that it brings. One other, I also want to talk to you about, so you've had an interesting career so far, and there's this quote that I heard not too long ago, and it's stuck in the back of my mind, and it was a very simple quote, but it was, the quote is, careers are long. Right. And it was in reference to just looking at, over time, we're going to work for a really long time. Right. And we're gonna work for a majority of our lives, hopefully, if we're lucky. And over the course of that time, you're going to work with a lot of different people. You might work for different companies, you might not, but you're certainly going to work with a lot of different people. And careers are long. So I want to get your perspective. Maybe you can start with what your sort of career path to date has looked like, including your time at Reynolds. But this idea of careers being long and how to make sure that you're always building bridges and never burning a bridge, right? How do you make sure that the door's always open? So I don't know where you want to start there, but I feel like you probably have a pretty good perspective on this.
Yeah. So, it's funny you bring this up. So let me kind of start at the bridges, because bridges, I think, this is really important. If I ever give a speech to a college class or anything of that nature, I one of the core things that I would emphasize is never burn a bridge. I don't care how upset you are. I don't care what happened, whether there was animosity with your superior, whatever it is, never burn a bridge. And it goes both ways. It's not just to the company. I also feel like no matter who you meet, like this really goes like, so in automotive, there is dealers and then there's vendors. So I personally like to think that I take a bit of a different approach to vendors than a lot of dealers do. I always like to maintain very good relationships with vendors. And the reason I do that is because automotive, as you and I well know, is it's not a small like business, but it's a small world. Like it's a really, really, really small world. And you never know that some sales rep who came in for Lord knows what, that you just kind of blow off and not even give a time of day to, one day will be sitting on the other side of that table. So it's like you don't just burn bridges with your employees. I think especially in modern day society, I think relationships and networking are very, very important. And I've done a number of movements in my career, but I don't think I've ever left a company, including when I worked for Reynolds. I don't think I've ever left on a bad note. Like a great example of this, I'll give you one. When I was at Apple, so when I was leaving Apple to come to Fox to be the CIO here. They actually asked me, because I built a lot of apps. So I built I think 44 applications at Apple. And they were like, do you mind staying for a month and recording a bunch of videos, walking through every application and kind of how it's built, structure, so on and so forth? And I was like, you know what? Now, first of all, Greg, let me tell you this. This is like the most boring thing you could. Can you imagine sitting in front of a camera and just explaining applications? It's like, now, I tried to make it more interesting. There's put a couple of jokes in there, but overall, this is a very, at least like being damned to do something. But I did it. I spent a month going through every app and explaining it. And on my way out, they said, hey, if you ever want to come back, you're more than well, just make a phone call. And that's how it's been in virtually every single company I've ever departed with, because I've never departed on a bad note or a result of something negative. It's just, like you said, careers are very long and things evolve. And I think if you really want to stay ahead, especially in the age of technology, you can go into AI, it doesn't really matter. You need to evolve constantly. And I think people who evolve and pivot and really go outside of their comfort zone truly end up in the most miraculous of situations and just experiences. So that's kind of, I think maintaining relationships and always being cordial to people is on the forefront of success. I think like soft skills, like having soft skills, and that's kind of going back to the CIO versus like an engineer, having those soft skills, I think is 50% of the formula to success. Maybe even 60%. Like, of course, hard skills, intelligence, whatever your experience is very important. But if you're a toxic individual, I'm sorry, you could be like this, the smartest person on earth, and you'll be the smartest person in the smallest of dark rooms by yourself. And that being said, to give you kind of a little background, did you want me to go like deep into, I guess, how I ended up where I ended up, or I wasn't sure?
I'll tell you what, you tell the story that you think people are going to be most interested to hear. How about that?
Okay, fair enough. I won't make it too lengthy because this could be a bit of a thing. So like, as you mentioned, I actually worked at Reynolds. And what's really interesting about my time at Reynolds, that was the first job I had out of grad school, was Reynolds and Reynolds. And it was in 2011. And in 2011, this was a very interesting time in our country, and I think in the world in general, because it was in the middle of the recession. So As you can imagine, you get out of grad school and you spend like a whole lot of time looking for jobs. Reynolds was one of the few opportunities I actually got. And at that time, this is the most interesting thing. So I'm the CIO in a company where we have a major automotive group. I'll tell you my exact experience with automotive dealerships out of grad school. I knew that's where my dad took me to get a car. That's it. That's literally all that I knew about car dealerships. So I don't care whatever I talk about Reynolds with anyone, what I say, no matter what whether you think positively or negatively about Reynolds, if you listen, can school you up on how car dealerships work. Because I was at a solid -3. Okay, like -3. That's zero. It was like a -3. I knew they existed. Mind you, I'm in Michigan, so like there's a lot of dealerships, right. But yeah. So I went with Reynolds, and it was the RSS position where you kind of help and improve utilization of Reynolds products in car dealerships. Then out of that, Fox asked me if I wanted to join them to do exactly that, but internally. So I did that. And in the midst of that, what I discovered, and this is funny the other part, the kind of a cool little story about this, my education is not in engineering. I'm not a CS major. I have an undergrad in public administration and a graduate degree, an undergrad in political science and a graduate degree in public administration. So essentially, I should be a bureaucrat or a politician or something. But I always like computers.
You can still get there.
Careers are very long. So yeah. So like I said, if you can maintain relationships, it's funny where you end up. So when I joined Fox, I did the thing that they hired me to do. But after a while, I realized I'm like, a lot of people are using emails and spreadsheets and all this stuff, and nobody's really leveraging data. So I started to really dig into data, doing all this stuff. And ultimately, I ended up building a very rudimentary BI tool. So I taught myself like databasing, back-end coding, front-end coding, and built a BI tool, essentially, a business intelligence tool. And then after that, I wanted to kind of do that. So I pivoted a little bit in my career, and I actually went into the tech industry, and I worked for a company called DataStax. And anybody who's technical probably knows what DataStax is. It's a company that does big data, Apache Cassandra, like managed Apache Cassandra. It's a type of database.
Sure.
I was a sales engineer that goes with the account exec, and I talk to people who are technical to kind of, explain Cassandra to them. So
So
I
kind of like
did
what you do
that.
now. So kind of
Sort of what I do now, except it was like two very hardcore IT departments. The
Okay.
coolest one I went to was, I believe, DISA. Are you familiar with DISA?
I'm not.
It's across the street from the NSA. It's the civilian arm of the NSA.
Okay.
Fun fact. So anyway, they like search your car. You can't bring cell phones. It was a whole thing. So that was probably the coolest one I did in there. But anyway, so I did that, and then Fox asked me to come back as a director of data and systems utilization, where I started to really evolve the BI tool and doing a lot more of data work with them. After that, I kind of again pivoted, ended up going to Apple, and I was a full stack engineer at Apple for I think like 6 years. And then I was asked to come back to Fox again, and here I am now. So that's like that. I spent a lot of time talking about this, so I'm not going to talk about it much more. But that's kind of I guess the history of that, of how I ended up where I'm at now.
I love it. I love it. And it sure seems like you're happy with what you're doing right now. Yeah.
I am very passionate about technology. I can always talk, I can be as technical as people want me to be or as high level. But the cool thing about it is I think in automotive, we are in like kind of like a huge transformation, not just because of AI, but I think it's also because of data. And people are really starting to realize the importance of data at like the dealer group level, not just at the vendor level. I think the industry is really evolving like in hyperspeed right now. So I'm very passionate about it because all I've done ultimately, if somebody asked, what do you do for a living or what have you done for your career? In one word, I'd say innovation. So I'm like a kid in the candy store right now in this industry because it's truly like so many things are happening. I mean, like you're having innovation contests. You show some of the products you guys are doing. I see other products out there, and I mean it's phenomenal seeing where the industry is going when you compare it to like 10 years ago.
Right.
It's truly insane.
Yeah. Well, and it really all is, you hit the nail on the head when you said data. I mean, that's where it's anchored, right? And, we look back 2 decades and we're in this software world, right? Which, we had a lot of really cool software, a lot of tools that created efficiencies or were designed to create efficiencies, a lot of tools that were designed to help us sell more, and they work. Right, they still work to this day, but what we're finding is as they become more and more robust, is and what we have inside of a store or inside of a 47 store group is a lot of different tools, right, and a lot of different disconnected tools, which means a lot of different disconnected data. And when those tools are operating off of different data sets, and some of it's in one place is missing, or it's inaccurate, or it's duplicated, it slows people down. But the people using the software, they have to confirm that it's accurate, or they have to rekey it. It slows them down. So these tools that were designed to create efficiencies and designed to help us sell, they're almost having the adverse effect and slowing us down. But then as we fast forward into when we think about what's possible with data, and we fast forward into this AI world, AI is not going to slow down. Right, the AI tools are going to go fast, and if they're using missing data, inaccurate data, duplicate data, they're going to do the wrong thing. Right, they're going to do the wrong thing, and they're going to do it fast. So it becomes more and more and more important, and this is probably what you live and breathe every day, to have kind of unified data, a unified data layer that your AI tools and frankly your software tools can all access and utilize, so that you don't have the wrong things happening. Whether that's communicating with a customer, whether that's structuring a deal, there's all these different kind of applications where the implications of doing something wrong are pretty heavy.
So you hit the nail on the head there. So up until the age of generative AI, which started like around 2021, where it became like really mainstream with generative AI, we had business intelligence. And I like to make this anecdote. It's somehow this anecdote always comes up when I speak. you had the time of business intelligence where this was like the hottest thing out there, and whether it would be internally or you'd have a vendor come in and they would show you like this most beautiful dashboard. Like the demo looks great. You can dig in, really dig into the information, see everything. You don't need to run traditional reports. Everything looks great, and you're like, dude, this is going to be killer. I mean, this is going to change our business. Okay, this is going to be awesome. So you turn the thing on, the graphs are bouncing, everything is exactly how it's shown in the demo, and you're like, this is just, dude, we're good. Then you start looking at numbers, every number is wrong. Like, what? And then of course you turn to the vendor and you go, so Mr. Vendor, why did you mess up all my data? Well, the vendor didn't mess up your data. They simply hooked in to your data.
Right.
And if you have this hodgepodge of garbage data that is essentially the average data, database, if you combine like your DMS, CRM, and dealer world, you start to realize it's like, this is all really good, except it's all useless. So then we hit the generative AI thing, and it's like exacerbated, like you said, it's much faster and it don't seem to slow down. It just seems to speed up. You're exacerbating this garbage data like times 1,000 with generative AI. So then you hook up a large language model, LLM, whatever, to your data. You start asking it questions, and you're like, holy crap, that is the most eloquently, beautifully worded wrong answer I have ever had. This is a piece of crap. And again, you go, the AI doesn't work. That's not the problem. The problem is that you gave it garbage and it eloquently returned extrapolations based off of that garbage. Now, of course, not to say that hallucinations don't happen and the thing can go off, but what I'm saying is garbage in, garbage out at the end of the day. So I think, and that's kind of why I think in dealer world right now, the two biggest acronyms that are used are AI and CDP.
Yep.
And I think CDP, I think the concept of the CDP is completely correct. I think that is what's necessary in order for you to be able to effectively market to your customers and know what your customers want, like, and need. You do need a CDP. What I think is happening, and I'm sure this has happened in other industries, and that's the most interesting thing about automotive industry. We actually have a crystal ball that we rarely use. In the automotive industry, we're always a little bit behind, like, your traditional retail industry or some other industry. And what you can do is look at what they've done in other industries and what has worked and what's failed. So like CDPs, for example, in retail have been around for the longest time. I mean, that's why everybody knows that these are the shorts you like and this is the hat you like, and and every time you go anywhere, it's specifically to exactly what you like, except in dealer world, where if you die, we still litter your grave with pamphlets of cars you didn't even own at time of death. Like, and that's the problem. But CDPs, the way we approach them right now, I think there is multiple versions of it, but ultimately what CDPs are it's just a database. It's just a cleaned up database that you can now leverage to effectively, not just cleaned up, it's cleaned up, and it's also a combined database. So it takes a variety of different data sets, combines them together, creates your true record, dedupes everything, hygienes the addresses, vehicle ownership, and then you can effectively market, which then gets rid of the kind of like that black hole of marketing spend where you just spray and pray and you hope it all works out. And for some reason you send 45 emails to Greg, one for every duplicate and then one for every vehicle that Greg has ever touched. But I think ultimately it's just a cleaned up database. And that's really important because I feel like when we speak of CDPs with different vendors, some vendors truly are building CDPs. They start from the data foundation and then work their way upwards to activation. Activation meaning using the actual data.
Right.
Other vendors started on the activation side and they're walking backwards into the CDP piece because CDP is now the hot acronym in the industry. And you need to be careful with, like, usually what I would always say to people, like, if you want advice, I would be careful with that, because if a vendor is activation first and data second, that is the antithesis of what the CDP is for. The point is to have a cleaned up data set that you can then activate on in whichever way you please. And it's extremely important to have that clean data set. Otherwise, if you start putting, again, business intelligence or artificial intelligence, or base your marketing off of it, it will be the exact garbage that you've been dealing with this whole time. And I think that's why dealers have become so disillusioned over the past, I don't know, 50 years with marketing, is because they're like, I spend and sometimes it works and other times it doesn't. Nobody can really tell me why. And I think that's why. So,
yeah. Well, and the other part about when you are starting with that data first, right? And when you're starting with that foundation, to your point, the other piece of that, or one of the other pieces of that gets me really excited, is not just activation, right? It's not just reaching out via email or reaching out via direct mail or even on social channels and digitally, but the sales enablement piece of it too, right? How does that data interact with your CRM? So when that consumer is on your website looking at a RAV4, right, as an example, what is their salesperson, how are they notified, right? And then what's presented to them? Are they given, hey, this is everything that is in this person's garage today. These are the transactions they've had in the past. This is their lifetime value at the store, if you want to share that with them. This is the deal that was put in front of them last week through your VR tool on your website. Here's the chat transcript from last week. And oh, by the way, since you probably aren't going to read all this, literally, if you send them this text right now, just hit send, they will respond to you. There's a high probability they'll respond to you. And since you're doing it in the CRM, it's going to be logged. And now we have an automated workflow that we can walk through. So that function, like that idea and that concept, is what gets me probably even more excited, because we've had marketing stuff for a long time, right? We've had marketing automation for a long time, and we've had targeting for a long time. Obviously, it's getting better and better and better. But when you think about what's possible with sales enablement, I get pretty excited about that. I don't know if you guys are toying with that, or where your head's at on that too.
Well, yeah, I completely agree. I think sales enablement from various directions. So kind of what you described, where it's like, hey, take all of this data, leverage. I mean, what you're getting at is now when you're getting into summaries and actually drafting of the message, you're getting into some generative AI as well. So having a large language model kind of put it together. That's one end of it that's very important, because if you think about it, when you were describing kind of building up to ultimately like, hey, here's a message you can send to them that has a high propensity chance of them responding to it. If you just gave all those little pieces that you described to a salesperson, number one, any human being would be highly overwhelmed. So here is their whole picture. Here is their value. Here is every message they've ever had. Here's every repair order. Here's all the call. It's like, dude, I'm just trying to reach out to a lead here. And, you gave me everything, and it becomes information. Even if, you could say like, hey, I can even give you every single thing that they've done on the website. And we have other attribution data from other third parties that can tell you that they like, skiing and hiking and stuff of that nature. But you're like, this is information overload for a human. Right. And that's where sales enablement in modern age comes in, is when you stick a large language model on it and you feed this cleaned up, combined, aggregated data set together. It can take all that in, not get overwhelmed, and then actually produce that message that you're talking about, where it actually creates like, hey, this person likes hiking. Let's add that into the message. Mention something. Hey, it's great hiking season, whatever. Like something that will make you stand out. I like to call that one marketing to an audience of one.
Yep.
Or a subjective messaging or subjective marketing, whatever you want to call it. But if you can have a cleaned up data set like this, and then you can leverage modern day technology to then craft a message specifically to Greg, for the specific thing that Greg is looking at, not like some kind of audience which make 10,000 people who looked at a Toyota Camry, not that, but specifically to Greg, based on what Greg is doing, based on what Greg likes. Like even stupid things out of CRM notes where it says something along the lines of Greg likes cookies. No salesperson will ever bring up freaking cookies. Like what could you possibly say in a message? Well, an AI would be like, and hey, when you come for a test drive, we'll have some nice warm chocolate chip cookies ready for you. Like, and going to sales enablement, it would then also let the salespeople, the sales team know, hey, you got to have some warm chocolate chip cookies for this person. Like, stuff. Now, on the other side, there is also the other piece of sales enablement where if you hook in like actual call tracking systems, something that records, you can get to the point. I actually have seen some really cool kind of up and coming companies where now they're like in real time suggest to the salesperson what to say while they're still talking. So not post-mortem coaching, but straight up, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's been going on in this conversation. Here is some suggestions of where you can lead this conversation. I mean, real-time sales enablement. You also got to remember when you're speaking to somebody, person tends to forget a certain piece you guys were talking about. I forget everything. So, like that kind of thing. But imagine in real time, you have something that is literally kind of keeping key points in front of you and telling you how to respond. That type of sales enablement, you're no longer post-mortem coaching. You are literally evolving your staff in real time. And that's huge. That right there I don't think has ever been possible until now, to just a real-time evolution. I mean, that's huge.
So. Yeah, it is. No, I mean, the possibilities are really, really interesting when you start peeling back the layers. But again, to your point, and I think it's one that can easily get overlooked, but I think it's the most important piece of this whole conversation is it starts with that data layer, right? It starts with that foundation and that single unified data layer that ties everything together. Because without that, you just end up with a mess. Like, literally, there's not a better word, I don't think, to describe it. It's just a mess. So
garbage in, garbage out. That's all you end up with.
Yep. Yuriy, I did want to talk about too. So earlier on, you mentioned business intelligence, and we've been talking about some exciting things that are happening. But I do want to get your take on reporting, business intelligence, because it's a really important piece of any business, but certainly our industry. And I get the feeling at times we measure things to measure them, and we don't always know exactly what to do with that. So in your experience, what have been some of the key, I guess, frameworks to set up in your mind around, okay, what do I want to measure and why? What am I going to do with that information? Because I think that it's so easy to say, well, I don't know, pick your KPI, right? We got 50 KPIs.
ELR,
we look at it in our industry.
ELR,
right?
whatever. Yeah.
So we're going to measure that. If it's up, we're good. If it's down, we're bad, right? But there's so many nuances to that. So I don't know, what framework do you use or encourage your team to use when thinking about measuring and then setting up tools to measure?
So my approach to business intelligence has always been, who am I? Not meaning me, but meaning who am I as the user of the business intelligence tool. So I previously mentioned, like in Fox, I built a business intelligence tool.
Right.
My first approach, kind of my anchor, was a general manager. So my approach was, I'm a general manager. I'm walking into a store. What I want to do as a general manager, I want to kind of have my thumb on the heartbeat of the dealership. So I kind of want to know, okay, how is service doing? How is parts doing? How is sales going? A lot of general managers, not all, but a lot of general managers come from the variable side.
Sure.
So they're probably much more versed in the variable side of things than they are in fixed operations. So traditionally, what you saw was general managers rely on the service manager to tell them how the service department is doing. Well, that's kind of equivalent to me sitting in high school. Teacher, I take a quiz. Teacher comes up to me and says, Yuriy, how did you do on the quiz? I think we got an A+. All right, sweet. Sounds good. And that's it. We're good. So what I wanted to do was empower the general manager to be able to see how it's going. So in other words, what are some of the key things you generally look in service, and really put it in front of them. I imagine the person walking with an iPad and just can they just walk in and have these conversations where they know the answers to things and kind of drive to deeper conversations and are able to drill into things. So again, you start at the person and then you work your way to other people. So in other words, what a GM is looking at is not the same as what a service manager looks at. So GM wants to know, gross profit percentage, your dollars per RO. GM wants to know, how much you're making per copy in F&I, like that kind of stuff. But then any one of those other department positions, obviously, when they get deeper into it, like how much of this product have I sold? What are my profit margins on this, that, and the other? That kind of thing. So I think business intelligence, if you just try to walk in and do a one size fits all, it'll fail. I think it needs to be compartmentalized into who is looking at it. Because I started as general manager and I started going up and down. So down meaning
Sure.
to department levels and up meaning to corporate infrastructure. So obviously at the corporate level, they don't want to see every single line of every single thing, but they do want to see kind of the holistic view. So you kind of go in that route. I think if you start from the person, from the position, not really. I mean, it's not really.
Sure.
From
Yeah.
the position and work your way outwards, you'll be successful because then when you give them something, they will be able to logically tell you what's missing, and that's the
Yeah.
approach I took. If you just think you can bring a solution and it will just meet everybody's criteria, that's impossible. It'll never happen. So,
Yeah. Well, and I also think, and tell me if you agree or disagree, but I also think having a shared data set and a shared dashboard that has the exact same data, the exact same metrics on it is visible to everyone. So when that GM walks into the service manager's office and says, why are hours per RO down? And then that service manager's caught off guard because he was just looking at a different report that said that they're even or they're up. That's a problem, right? Then he's defensive, then he's scrambling. Because the point as the GM isn't to go beat somebody over the head. It's to see if you can help them get better. Because, I mean, if they're looking at the same information, they know their hours per RO are down, and that's bad. So they're already either trying to fix it or they're thinking through how to fix it and trying to uncover what the problem is. So as the GM, as the leader, you're not going in with a hammer to tell them that they're terrible, right? You're going in to try to see if there's something that you can do to help, or worst case, to make sure that you're confident that they have a plan in place.
And that, what you're getting at is completely the fundamental thing. So the first thing you really do need to do for business intelligence is to create your data lake. I get that's what we call it at Fox.
Yeah.
Our data lake. You need a data lake that ingests all the numbers. If you have multiple DMS systems, they still need to be put into a normalized just for it's a technical term for it needs to fit the same data from different places needs to look the same to be able to make it the same for everybody. So
Right.
you need the normalized data set, which takes all your systems in. So for example, at Fox, we have a lot of our stores are on DealerTrack. We have a store on CDK. We still pull the data in and then convert it into our data model. So then our business intelligence tool can present the exact same numbers no matter what DMS you're on. We did it with Reynolds as well. Same thing with the CRM. You ingest all that. I mean, foundationally, I think nothing is more important than the data. All of the pretty stuff, the AI, all this other stuff is literally useless if you don't have a combined and truly monolithic data set that it feeds off of. Because like you said, if you have multiple data sets, the issue is, yes, you looked at one data set, I looked at another data set, the numbers don't exactly match, and now we're having two parallel races trying to reach the goal, and it's not even the same goal at that point.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, you're spot on. So another thing when you're looking at data, right, and you're measuring, from your perspective and your experience, I think there's kind of three things that typically get measured against, right? So you have trends. Are we doing better or worse than we were yesterday, right? Like, what's our trend line look like? So that's one thing that you can measure against. Benchmarks. So our 20 group said that we should do this, or our other GM stores in this area of the country are doing this. So we have benchmarks that maybe we can meet, maybe we can't. So you have trends, you have benchmarks. And then you have goals, right? That are just, hey, we need this store to do X by the end of the year. How are we tracking towards that goal? So when you think about those three things to compare against, what do you think's most important and effective, or does it depend on the situation?
So in our company, we budgets are big. So goals, I guess, internally set goals. That's usually our number one thing. I think very close second would be the year over year. So
Okay.
not just not like to yesterday to last month, but really year over year. Like how do we compare to the previous year? Of course, then you have black swan events like COVID, where it obviously benefits or doesn't, depends on your business, whatever. But that creates a real problem there because now you're comparing apples to oranges to apricots
Yep.
over like the 3 or 4 years of the legacy of COVID, essentially. Um, I think what's a lot of what a lot of times what's overseen, especially in our business, is in most businesses, in most industries, excuse me, you have your quarterly reviews, annual reviews, your semi-annual review, like that kind of thing. I feel like the car business, especially on the dealer world side, it's like monthly business reviews. So like
We
not
got 30
QBRs, but
days.
Ambia. And I feel like I can see why. The entire business model is built on, hey, how many cars do you got left? I mean, we got what is it? We're like 5 days left in the month. Okay, cool, man. How many cars do we have in the pipe? We need this many to hit our incentives. The whole incentive model is built off of, hey, this is how many you got to hit. This is all you can. When you're at the operational level, all you care about is the month. And I like to say it's like the mafia. You're only as good as your last envelope. I mean, that literally is. It's like you got the 1 month, and then the next month you could be a hero, and then you're like the worst person on earth a month later. Um, what I think what's missing, and this is what in our organization, a lot of what I try to drive is not a store or a brand or a division, because we have multiple divisions, um, but the strategy for the group. So like, not just look at what happened last year, compare it to this year, not just look at what happened with this make, because obviously, depending on what's going on with the OEM, depending on what we're doing, there's all kinds of variables in that. But think of it strategically, and not even on a monthly or quarterly level, but think of it in like 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 years. And I always like to apply technology to it, because sometimes the P&L will say one thing, but there is a long-term play that you're just not seeing. As an example, like I'll give you one. A lot of dealers now are starting to use AI to respond to internet leads.
Mhm.
They're starting to do it. Um, the big groups are really into it, and it's like, well, come on, but we have BDCs; they can respond to internet leads. Why do you need to why do you need AI to do it? And I can give you reasons for that, and we do it, and that's fine. Um, but the point is, if on the front you're like, well, we have BDCs and that's fine, you're not thinking 3, 5, 10 years down the line. Frankly, with that particular thing, I think the way models are evolving, within a couple of years, they will be intelligent enough to where they're going to probably start actually talking numbers. You get enough data behind it, these things are going to start talking numbers. And now you're making sales at 2 a.m. that you couldn't do before. Like that kind of thing. Now, are we doing
Sure.
that now? Absolutely not. But I do think it'll evolve in that direction. And I think if you don't see the foresight and you're still sitting like doing the same BDC you've done for the past 30 years, you will be left behind. You just don't realize that yet. So
Yep.
I think to your point, I think it's good to have goals, but I think it's also important to have long-term, like much bigger picture goals for your company, not just for your dealership or for your set of dealerships. And it's also important to see past the P&L and past the, hey, how do we do versus last year or versus last month, and try to see where things are going. Because if you stay ahead of the curve, you will beat your competition. And by the time people realize that you're beating them, it's already too late for them to. Now you're just catching up. So
Right. Right. No, that's a good perspective. Hey, one other thing I want to get your perspective on. You're obviously a forward thinking person. You have your hands in a lot of really cool technology. You're exposed to a lot of different things. So Yuriy, let me frame it up this way. Give me. We talked about careers are long, right? How many years do you have before you'd start considering retirement?
you know what? I have been. I almost retired out of Apple. Straight up, I was thinking about retirement out of Apple. Um, but it's hard to say that, because what I find, so you know what I'm going to retire when my passion dies. Like if you
Okay.
talk to me, you can kind of feel energy, and
Sure.
I swear, if I walk in, I don't care where I'm working, and I don't care what they're paying me. If I walk into a place and it feels soulless to me, like I'm just here, I'm trying to get a paycheck, just trying to get by. I think that's the time to go. I don't right now. I'm just so excited with technology, and I'm just so excited with things that, I mean, you can probably see it on me. Like I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. Um, I don't think I would ever retire in this mental state.
Yeah.
I think the way technology, honestly, right now, it'd be kind of foolish to retire, because if you're like into innovation, you kind of just want to stick around to see where the heck this whole thing is going to go. I mean, straight up, like I said in the beginning of our conversation, dealer world is evolving so much, and there's just so many interesting. I mean, do you notice that we have like more and more tech is getting like you got people like me. So I mean, I started in automotive, but then I wasn't like in deep. I'm in deep tech. This is like tech, and somehow end up back to automotive. And what I'm seeing, like I talk to a lot of vendors, and I'm seeing more and more straight up tech people coming into
I mean,
automotive.
I was just talking about that with somebody here at Reynolds the other day too, because we have a couple of examples. Gordon Leach, who's the founder of Deskit up in Canada, really cool virtual retailing tool, digital retailing tool, and desking tool, and then also AJ McGowan, founder of AutoVision. I mean, both of those guys have decade or so, a little bit more of experience in tech companies, Silicon Valley companies, and then they became founders. But they're with us now, and it's like, man, I love having these guys on our team. They're super bright, and they have great experience in a lot of these other industries too.
And it's a different breed. It's like a different breed of person. It's a whole other perspective that you didn't have. The other thing I always like to say is, automotive used to be the tech industry. Like if you watch any documentaries about how automotive kind of started, the big three, all that, they were the tech industry. It's just Silicon Valley then kind of took that torch and went on with it. But auto used to be the tech industry before there was a tech industry, which is kind of a cool little thought in my mind. So
yeah, no, we're in a cool place. We really are. All right, well, Yuriy, what haven't we talked about that we should? Anything I didn't ask you that I should have asked you today?
I don't know. I mean, we can, I think we covered a good amount of it. We can always do another one, I'm sure. Off the top of my head, I think we touched on a number of things. So I think it's a good amount of content there for people to process, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you giving me so much time. I do obviously want to be respectful of your time, though. So thank you very much for joining me. I had a fun conversation. I really did. And I'm sure everybody listening enjoyed it, too. So thank you very much for your time and for the insights. And we will have to do it again sometime soon, I hope. I feel like I could talk to you for hours, if not days, depending on, the stimulants that we had available. Big pot of coffee in the middle might keep us going.
That's right. But I don't even drink coffee. I think me on coffee it'd be turned up to like a 12, and then the hand would start shaking. So no, great conversation. I had a good time. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm always happy to chat, and I'm sure we could pick any one of the topics we discussed and go as deep as people don't want to hear us talk. So, but always a good time. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, Yuriy Demidko, Chief Information Officer at DP Fox Ventures. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you got half as much out of that conversation as I did. We kind of went all over the place. Yuriy is a ball of energy and a wealth of knowledge, so I really appreciate him spending some time with me. And like I said, I hope you were able to take some notes too. If your pen wasn't ready and you were driving or whatever, it might be worth going back and listening to that one. Yuriy always has great insights. Before we hop off, don't forget you can watch or listen to all episodes of Connected on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify podcasts. And make sure to hit subscribe so you're notified every other week when new episodes are released. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.